Okay, let's learn about strings. So before we begin, let's talk about a few key things about strings and I guess really what are strings. So strings are sequences of and you can use single or double quotes. So this would look something like hello, helps you spell it right, hello. Or you can use double, hello. Cool. Perfect. You can also index or slice a string. We'll get into that later. You can use the indexing to either go from the start of the string or kind of different parts within the string. You can also, within slicing, do stuff like this. So slicing, actually, I'll give you the general format of it so you have it. So when you go to slice a string, you have three things to look at. You have the start, where you want to start your slice. You have your end, or your stop, and your step, which is how many steps you want to go. So do you want to go every letter, every other, every third, so on and so forth. But to make it easier, let's actually just get right into this and show you how strings work and different ways we can kind of play with them. So let's say we have this sentence right here. So this is a string, right? We use the double quotation. It's great. I can use single, say this is a string, and it's a string again. So let's say I have something like this. Single quotes. I'm not hungry. Close again. That's weird. It's no longer highlighted all red, and that's the reason is because we have this other apostrophe here. So it thinks we're actually closing the string. And if I were to run this, I would get invalid syntax. I have an error. So in this case, what you would do is you would utilize your double quotations. No, I'm not hungry. Perfect. And it all works as planned. Let's get rid of that. Some other things to look at when it comes to strings are things like escape characters. So let's say we are printing the rock is overrated. Take that, Dwayne. And we have our string here. It's printed out. The rock is overrated. We can also use escape characters. So if I go print the rock, actually, let's save some time. Let's not do extra work here if we don't have to. We can utilize an escape character. So if I go backslash n and I run it, now you'll see that overrated is on a different line. Cool thing you can do with this is, let's say I get rid of the white space there because it looks ugly. I want the rock and overrated to be directly underneath each other. I can basically put overrated right up against the escape character, the backslash n, and it will work just as we like. So it's now directly underneath. Another escape character you can use is T, so tab. Now, as you can see, the rock is space tab overrated. Same thing. You can also add your space here if you'd like, if you want to add that extra spacing, but it all works. And you can even add multiple escape characters in the same sentence. So the rock, new line, is tab overrated. You can kind of go crazy with it. Do whatever you want with it. Another great thing with strings is you can check the length of it. So the length, let's say the rock skips leg day. I don't know if he does. No, he definitely doesn't. I've seen him on Instagram. He doesn't skip leg day. But if I were to check the length of this string, I can see that it's 22 characters long. Keep in mind, it does count white space. So let's say I just went the, and I kept my white space at the end there, I'd have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, white space counts when you're checking the length. We can also assign strings to variables. So let's assign one that says Gav has bigger muscles than me, which is a true story. I taught the rock everything he knows. So I have a string, the rock. And so with this, I can actually start to index it. And what indexing means is I can take pieces of it, or I can choose where within the sentence I want to take information or take a character. So let's show you how that works. So if I use my square brackets here and I press 0, I get the very first letter, which is a great thing to keep in mind. Indexing starts at 0. So 0 is always the very first one. So if I did the rock and I went 1, I should get A, because now we're at index 1. Perfect. Some other things when it comes to indexing is that you can use the negative sign. And so -1 will take the very last letter in the entire sentence. And you can pick whatever you want. 4, so we go 4, 1, 2, white space 4, and that makes sense. Let's get rid of this. Okay. Ooh. Why are you so difficult? All right. Why? Oh, here we go. Silly me. All right, so that's gone. Cool. So we have that. Now let's actually look at the slicing piece in terms you can grab the different parts. So remember we were looking at before, we were talking about we wanted to slice a string. We'd have the start, we'd have the stop, and we'd have the step, right? So we still have the sentence, the rock. So Gav has bigger muscles than me. And let's say I want to grab, I don't know, I want to grab everything from Gav over. So what I can do is I can do the rock, and I can choose what I want to grab. So I say, okay, I want to grab everything except for Gav, let's say. So I go 1, so 0, 1, 2. So we start at 2, and we go all the way over. 0, 1, oh, sorry. I should have put 3. My apologies, so I don't want Gav. So 3, so has bigger muscles. So I grabbed everything from starting at that third variable, so that white spot, over. We can also do the reverse. So let's say I want to go -3 over. I grab everything starting from back over. So 1, 2, 3. So I go 3 back and I go over. I only get me. Cool. The next thing we can look at with the rock is, let's say I wanted to grab everything except for Gav, but I want to only go as far as 6, for example. And I just get ha. So I started at the third variable. So space, 4, 5, and we don't count 6. So I get only ha. Perfect. And the last thing I want to take a look at is using the step. Oh, actually, another thing to really look at, really cool to look at. So you can actually use these variables in kind of a bunch of different ways, which is really cool. So let's say I don't put a start. I don't care where I start. I want to start at the very beginning, so I don't put anything there. But I only want to go as far as variable 11, let's say. So Gavin has big. Kind of a weird sentence, but that's fine. That's beside the point. But as you can see, I can go as far. I can go from the beginning to 11. It does. I don't need to put anything here. I could if I want. I could put 0 and I get the exact same thing, but I don't need to. No sense typing extra if you don't have to. Gavin has big. We'll leave it at that. Another thing we can look at when it comes to slicing is the step. So let's say I want to start variable 1. I want to go all the way to variable 10, but I want to take every other letter. So remember our step. So I put a 2, and I get every other letter. So A, I. So 1, A, V, A, B, I. Cool. Every other. Nice. It does count the white space too. So A, white space, A, white space, I. Cool. You can also do stuff like, let's get rid of this so we have more room. So the rock. We can also look at stuff like, let's say I just wanted every other letter. I can put the colons and just press 2, and it will give me every other letter. Again, you don't need to put anything here. You just use these 2 colons to get every other letter. You can also, let's say I wanted to assign it a variable. So let's say I have Gav, and actually, so let's do it this way. So the rock, if I just want to grab just Gav, nothing else, I go 4. Perfect. I got Gav and I got the white space. And let's say I want to assign that now. I'm going to go Gav equals the rock to 4. So now Gav has been assigned to this variable here. I can print the variable, and cool, I got Gav. That's great. Something to know about strings, though, is that strings are immutable. And so what this means is that you can't you can't just add things to the string kind of in a willy-nilly way. You can through like concatenation, but you couldn't just assign a variable. So let me show you what that looks like. So if I have name, so if I have, let's do this, my name is equal to Gav, okay? And I say, you know what? I wish I put a capital G. I really should have done that. So I go name, and I'm gonna say, you know, I'm gonna grab the very first variable, and I'm gonna assign it. I'm gonna say it's now capital G. And I get an error. Why? Because you cannot assign the variables. You cannot, you know, add or change the letters within. Again, they're immutable. And there are kind of ways around this. I got something in my eye here. There are ways we can do this. So let's say I really need to put it as a capital, but I don't want to go all the way back and reassign it and all that fun stuff. My code's too long. There's too much going on here. So we'll go back to again Gav, perfect. Actually, no, sorry, I called it name, right? Name. Yeah, okay. So I got name, Gav. What I can do is I can go name, and I can grab everything except the first letter. Now I got Av. And through concatenation, I can actually add these letters or add these strings together. So let's say I wanted to go capital G, and I'm gonna add name. Actually, I guess I gotta reassign this first. So let's do this. Let's go last letters equals that. Perfect. Run that. And I'm gonna add my last letters to it. Now I have Gav with a capital G. Perfect. The other thing we want to look at, and similar how you could add it together. Let's say I wanted to do, I don't know, last letters plus last letters plus, last letters, on and on. They keep adding together, but that's a lot of work. What if I wanted to, I don't know, multiply it, for example? So I could do something like this. So let's call this one bing bong equals space bing bong space. Cool, right? We assigned it, bing bong the variable. What I can do is I can do bing bong, and I can go times 10. And now I have bing bong 10 times. A couple other really cool things we can do with strings. Let's create a new string. We're gonna call it Dwayne, and it's gonna be called Gavin, or Gav taught me can't spell here. Everything he knows, or everything I know. Cool, I got my new string here. And you know what? I want to check the length of this string. I check of Dwayne, and it's a length of 30. But you know what? When I look at this string, I think, how much better would it look if everything was in uppercase? So I can call upper. Everything is now in upper. Vice versa, I can say, you know what? Uppercase, a little aggressive. What would everything look like in lower? You can do lower. Last thing I want to cover when it comes to strings is splitting. So if we look back at our string here, Dwayne, if I go Dwayne dot split, its default is that we'll split on every white space. So now I've created a list of all my different words within my variable. You can also, if you want, split based on a variable. So I can split based on A, for example. And now everything that had an A in it is now cut out, and wherever the A was, it would split.